just some waffle. Some will understand it, most won't. I think we're going to run out of domain names. Just about I see it. Because you're going to get this is it. You've got all these YouTubers now earning a few quid off YouTube. This is it. Google and Facebook are taking workers out of the economy. When you think that on Universal Credit will pay you in the UK just basic, no PIP or ESA. Is it? Yeah, not ESA. Whatever it is, I can't. Yeah, whatever it is, there's ESA, PIP. The two of the benefits anyway. Yeah. Then you've got basic universal credit, and then you've got another PIP and got something else. Another benefit. I can't remember what it was. 3 benefits, but basic universal credit will pay around about 500 quid plus for your rent accommodation, which means if you've got to rent a room, all your bills are included, right? Then you've got 70 quid a week to yourself, right? On universal credit, which is, so if universal credit reckon you can live on, which is about 900 a month, right? 10 nines is 9 grand. 10,800, so about £11,000. Yeah, so let's call it 12. At some point it'll be 12 grand. So this is January 2022. So universal credit reckon you can live on £11,000. Right? Rent paid for, CSA paid for, your loan detachment to earnings, your loan payment repayment, and your CSA, everything. You can live on £10,800 net a year. Right? So Google ad dollars and Facebook ad dollars via Instagram and YouTube have only got to be, a YouTuber only has to earn 12 grand to pay a room and live, groceries, that's it, and a phone. Yeah. So when a YouTuber earns more than 12 grand, they can no longer have to work for a living, apart from doing YouTube, which is answering comments, making videos, and telling people to go on a Patreon or donations, PayPal. At some point, but that they have got brands, but they're building their brands on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, which is Facebook and Google owned, right? Or Meta, whatever you want to call it. Meta owns Facebook, or I don't know if Facebook, I'm not on Facebook, so I wouldn't know whether it's rebranded to Meta, or Facebook is a product of Meta, owned by Meta, like Alphabet owns Google and YouTube. Yeah. But so at some point, these bloggers keep on making videos, and at some point their ad dollars, because let's just say Google will be around for 10, 20, 30 years. Yeah. It's $1 trillion company. It's about $1.6 trillion company. Amazon is over 1 trillion. Right? Microsoft is getting close to 2 trillion. Apple's a $2 trillion company. They're not going to go bust anytime soon. So your ad dollars are going to keep on accruing over the years, which will take people, workers that used to work for £9 an hour, 10 quid an hour, out of the economy, which will create a staff shortage. Because why would you go work for £9 an hour if you can just pick up a phone and waffle into it, right, and make a vlog, and get some ad dollars from it, right? Then you got the YouTube join button, which is extra money. You got the ad dollars, then you got the YouTube join, which is extra on top of the ad dollars. Then you got the Patreon, which is subscription, whatever, yeah. Then you get monthly payments on top of that. Then you've got Instagram, and that'll pay ad dollars. Then you've got PayPal donations. So a lot of popular person would actually quite easily earn 12 grand a year, which is more than what Universal Credit reckon you can do. So Google is almost like sucking workers out of the economy. But the thing is, they're basing their brands on Google and Facebook. What happens if Google sells up, yeah, and says I'll take $2 trillion for Google, right, and goes off into the sunset, right, with $2 trillion in his back pocket, right, or their back pocket founders, right. What happens if someone offers Facebook $1 trillion, cash notes, right, yeah, for Facebook, right? What happens if Facebook goes down the MySpace route? People have MySpace. How many people that had MySpace checked their MySpace account this morning? If you build your brand on a social media platform, your brand only exists as long as that social media platform exists. And if that goes bust for whatever reason, not that I'm saying Google and Facebook won't go bust, but so your brands, if you built your brand on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or whatever, yeah, you should be alright. Should be alright. But at some point, it's going to take a lot of resistance if someone in the media put $1 trillion to get it combined for YouTube or Facebook or whatever, or Google. It's going to take a lot of risks to say, yeah, we'll have that. But then your brand, they can actually change the terms and conditions of your brand. You could be an eBay reseller. If you sell your product on eBay, your whole brand on eBay is subject to eBay's terms and conditions of use. So is Google, so is YouTube, so is Instagram. If you own your domain name, your brand exists on your terms and conditions and nobody else's, as long as you own the right to use that domain. But then you get into pickles with like UDRPs, RDNHs and WIPO, which many businesses will know a lot about for brand, right? And then you've got these brands that now have their brand and a dot, which means they are assuming ownership of all of the 1,200 website address extensions, which means they won't put their brand.com because someone else will have their brand.co.uk, but they'll want ownership of that even though they don't own it, so they'll assume ownership of website address extensions that they don't own. And every time a brand does that, so you see a brand on a domain name where they have a brand and just a dot, which means they are assuming all ownership of that brand, anything past the right of the dot, which basically they're assuming global rights to anything with that just one keyword brand. Most won't have that, and if there was challenge in it, UDRP, they wouldn't have that, because you'd have to buy all the extensions, and they won't. So they're assuming ownership of stuff they don't own. But the problem is, once a brand does that, it's like Google.com. Right? You can't get a Google domain. They own everything, or they've done a negotiation. No Google can be issued because they own it. But that takes out 1,200 website addresses straight away. Then you got Google, everything else. Another 1,200. It's just eating through domains, just through trademarks and branding and copyright, which means there won't be any domains for people to actually have domains, to have a business on that domain, because it will be duplicated, which means it will be UDRP, RDNH and WIPO. WIPO is World Intellectual Property Office, Somalia. And you got UDRP, which is a reverse domain name. Yeah, you know what I mean. If you're going to type in UDRP into YouTube, RDNH into YouTube, or WIPO into YouTube, and you'll see cases of brands trying to get their brands back. But this is basically it. We're going to run out of website addresses for people to have a brand, so they'll have no choice but to actually build their brand on Facebook and Google, which will give more power to Facebook and Google. There's no way around it. Basically, if you divide your screen as to 50%, 50% is Facebook and Google, and this bit is domains, but trademarks infringe half of that, so there's about a quarter or an eighth, which is domain names which are available to use, and they're going to be that expensive they'll be worth more than houses. All good fun. You will have to pay more than a brand new car to buy a website address before long. Just like Bitcoin, you can buy a brand new car with one Bitcoin, when it was only worth there was 187 Bitcoin to a penny in 2010. And now you can buy a brand new car with a Bitcoin, for 1 Bitcoin. You'll soon a domain name, well it already is. Some domain names are already worth more than houses. Some domain names you can buy off the street. This is domain names for you. It exists now in 2022, January. All good fun. Adios.